Anya, thank you so much. Terrific message there, and it certainly seems to have resonated with the 300 plus people who've joined us for this morning's conference. You're not shy when it comes to keeping in touch, I've got to say. Isabel says, hi from Coralie Activity Centre in Fermanagh. Hi, I'm Katie. I work for a company called Orient. We're opening a new hospitality venue in Belfast later this year. Kelly McRoberts, a facilitator of Causeway Coast Route Cluster Project and Director of Experience Northern Ireland. So looking forward to hearing how I can support our members to survive, revive and thrive. Well, you've certainly been hearing that this morning. Hi from Christopher from ASM Accountants in Belfast. He's been enjoying the conference, as have the team at Brack Tours. Alan from Hinch Distillery, he's looking forward to it as well. Catherine at Insight Mystery Shopping. I would love to be a mystery shopper. Wouldn't that just be the best thing ever? And from Further Space Glamping, Colette says that she's listening in today and excited to hear all of the plans. So keep all of your chat coming on the chat line, will you? We'll be making sure that we keep up with it. And the hashtag is NI, Survive, Revive, Thrive. Keep up with that too. So we may not be able to get to all of your questions in our next session, but just to assure you that anything that we haven't managed to touch on, we'll get in touch with you afterwards and come up with the answers for that, because there's quite a lot to get through in the next little while. But I would really like now to introduce our excellent panel for our discussion. As you can see, John McGrillen, Chief Executive of Tourism NI, he's here with me, as is Judith Owens from Titanic Belfast. Hi, Judith. And then on our magnificent screen, we have Martin McMullan going from the left over there, who's on the County Down coast with some paddle boarders behind him. Ciaran O'Neill from the Bishopsgate Hotel in Derry, Londonderry. And absolutely last but not least, from south of the border, if that's the right way to put it, Annett from ITOA Ireland and CIE Tours. So we're going to cover the whole of the island in this to the best degree that we possibly can. Now, there was some football match on over the weekend, apparently, John, which was something to do with Euro 2020, which I thought was last year, but you obviously think it's next year, because I think that at some point there, you said you were hoping to see a full recovery by the end of 2020, but we're looking ahead, 2024.
Yeah, okay, well, sorry about that. I mean, it would have been very nice to have seen a full recovery by the end of 2020, so yes, that should have read 2024, but I mean, I think it's fair to say, and Judith might want to comment on this, I think we've got off to a good start over the last number of weeks as things have opened up. And I think the interesting thing for me, listening to the comments that have just been coming through, are the number of new ventures that, have sort of joined us this morning. So these are people who obviously see a bright future, and certainly my sense from the comments that we've seen is a real sense of positivity that perhaps we didn't see this time last year when we first opened up. So I think we're on a journey, and I think we've got off to a really good start.
There is quite an interesting vibe, isn't there, Judith? I mean, there are so many more people about, so many venues that you see are sprucing themselves up like mad on the outside. Others, like the Malone and so on, have completely redone themselves on the inside too. And for Titanic, you must be really looking forward to getting those visitors back in.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Titanic Belfast has been incredibly successful over the last 8 years. And, when COVID hit back in 2020, we had our best year. So it's been devastating, but it is brilliant to see people coming back in through our doors again. As John says, it's the positivity. It's not about what is happening right now. It's actually about the future. And when we talk to our operators, the international operators who can't come to us at the moment, the positivity is there for them to come over the next couple of years, which is really what we're working towards.
It's interesting too, and John, you and I think virtually all of our presentations this morning referred to it, which is about the difference in the kind of tourism that we're talking about now. There was a time when, one would have said jokingly, but not really, that you didn't come to Northern Ireland for the weather. But actually, whatever the weather's like, people want to be outside now, don't they? They want to be enjoying that experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think people ever did come to Northern Ireland for the weather. I've read someone saying yesterday the only people who complained about the weather in Northern Ireland were the people who actually live in Northern Ireland. The people who come here, that's what they expect, is what they get. But certainly, and Martin will probably vouch for this, I mean, we've seen a huge growth in activity type tourism and people getting out and about and onto, into the land and onto the landscape. And I suppose, that was a trend that was always happening, but it would appear that COVID has, to some extent, accelerated that because people feel much safer out, in those open spaces. But I mean, that's a trend I think is going to continue, and I think we in Northern Ireland are extremely well placed to deliver on that, and the sort of activities that Martin and his team provide up in Castlewell and in around the Mournes, and we see similar businesses developing on the North Coast and in Fermanagh, really right across Northern Ireland. I think we're really well placed to respond to that.
Yeah, Martin, tell us a bit about the way that people's appreciation for the great outdoors has maybe changed over the last year and how that has impacted on your business there.
Yeah, well, I think over the past year, what we've witnessed is very much the domestic market and the change of attitude in the domestic market to the outdoors. I think there's been a great demand, maybe partly because people can't travel beyond Northern Ireland at the minute, but that in itself has encouraged them to investigate what's on their own doorstep and to avail of what's on their own doorstep, from basic walking activities, cycling, paddling, etc. So I think it's increased the awareness of what we have available within Northern Ireland to the domestic market. And that in itself then helps promote that to out-of-state visitors and that greater appreciation and understanding.
And Ciaran, I wonder how that affects you and Bishopsgate Hotel, given that it's a city centre hotel. That was always part of the attraction within the historic walls of Derry, but of course with very easy access to the beautiful country surrounding it. How do you see that panning out for you?
No, I mean, we've always been a gateway to Donegal as well. I mean, there's so much to do. I think the last 14 months have opened everybody's eyes in Northern Ireland to how much things there is to do, activities outside, and the opportunity. I mean, I'm a glass half full person, but over the last 14 months, there's times I was just happy to have a glass to pour the water into. But the real bounce back in the last 3 weeks has given us real optimism. I mean, Tourism Northern Ireland did great work in 2018 and 2019 with Genesis, looking at these market segments. I don't know all the trendy terms, but we were able to tap in immediately to those segments, those outdoor people, the young people, the family. Our city's been alive now for the last 3 weeks. There's so much to do that it's untapped. And I think this is a great opportunity to reset tourism in Northern Ireland.
And Des, your industry has faced enormous challenges in the past year, really, hasn't it? Tell us a bit about that and how your sector has managed to adapt.
Thanks, Wendy. There's been a lot of challenges for us over the last year, from going to zero revenue immediately, and I think a lot of our partners find that the same, to challenges with staff retention and keeping that expertise and that organizational knowledge in place. But the biggest challenge was retaining our order book. So the ITOA members, there's 30 plus members, had about 500 million worth of business on the books at that point in time, and suddenly realized, well, how do we, without knowing when the markets were going to reopen again and when international travel would be allowed to happen again, how do we convert that business into a future period in time? And it's not a case of just copying and pasting customers across. You have to call every single customer and encourage them to travel in the future. And all our members have been very good at retaining a lot of that business. That business is about 350 million at the minute. And Northern Ireland is the third biggest region for the ITOA members on the island of Ireland, and gets about 15% of that business. And that was a big challenge. Encouraging customers to move and ensuring that they were aware that there would be a lot of safety and a lot of focus on safety around the destination when the time came back to travel.
That's an interesting point about the safety around destinations and so on. And John, you mentioned it in your presentation today about how, that really, people want to be absolutely sure that they're going to be okay, and that everything possible is being done to make sure that that's the case. When you're on an island like Ireland, and you've Ciaran talking about how Derry's gateway into Donegal, you've got cross-border travel taking place as well. It's going to be all the more crucial that all of that works together, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, certainly for out-of-state visitors, so people who are coming, say, from the United States or Europe, and they're coming onto the island of Ireland, and their visit here takes in sort of both jurisdictions, for want of a better phrase, it really is important that we're joined up. And whilst we've got, I suppose, two different, jurisdictions, and we've got two different sets of, guidance and principles, I think as time progresses, I think much more, we will see things move to much more towards risk management as opposed to, prescriptive guidance. And I think as we move down that track, I think we will see things starting to, coalesce and converge, so that hopefully when DES is bringing in the visitors through CIE or other ITOA members, that they will not see any difference, as they never have seen, as they cross the border. So we also work very closely with our colleagues in Fáilte Ireland and Tourism Ireland. We would meet with them regularly, and these are the sorts of things that we discuss in order to make sure that whatever we do, we're trying to respond as best we can to the customer's needs.
It's one of the, I suppose, difficult things to get hold of, isn't it? One of my colleagues used to talk about nailing jelly to the ceiling. And, when you're trying to hold on to what the various different regulations are, wherever it is that you happen to be at the time, that must be something, Ciaran, you on the border of Donegal, that you have to deal with as well, to make sure that all of the different regulations in the two sides of the border are being adhered to as far as your guests are concerned.
I think they're very much on a par. I think the opening times of the Republic of Ireland and ourselves sort of interchanging at the moment. I was in Mayo yesterday, and it was different there than it was here. I think we're ahead with the vaccine process, and I think Northern Ireland, we've seen a huge uplift in the Republic of Ireland visitors, particularly whilst Ireland remains closed for indoor hospitality. But the good to go has given our consumers coming in a real confidence. The vaccine is definitely the driver to get the consumers back out again. But that good to go certificate when they receive in the door, and the training around that, it's critical that you give that to your staff. And there is a real confidence this time. I know last year in July it was a bit more nervous and there was a lot more anxiety, but our staff are more comfortable and confident, and the guests coming in are very much. And sometimes you have to remind them that COVID still exists. When they're coming for their leisure break.
And Judith, you talked about the whole business of international travel and those enormous numbers of people who were coming through Titanic just a couple of years ago. How are you looking at kind of driving that business back? How have you had to respond and adapt your business this year?
Well, if you look at Titanic Belfast, in 2019 we welcomed close to 900,000 people. 65% of those came outside of the UK and Ireland. So when COVID hit, our business model didn't work anymore because we knew that the international markets weren't going to come back. So unfortunately, we had to make some really difficult decisions at the very beginning, which we did, and we looked at our whole business model and our structure, and we have restructured our business, because what we want to be is we have been the catalyst for the growth of the international markets over the last 8 years. We need to be in that position again, so we need to make sure that Titanic Belfast is in a sustainable position, which we are now, having gone through a major restructure. One of the things over the last 8 years is that we have built up great partnerships with some of the international operators and in-market agents, and that hasn't gone away. So whilst we are really enjoying the flourish of domestic visitors coming to Titanic Belfast, what we can't lose sight of is that we have to grow those markets. So we're maintaining the relationships with the operators. We are trying to drive bookings for the next year and working with them. As we heard, they've had an incredibly difficult 15 months as well. So I think we need to be flexible and we need to work together to try to make sure that we can create sustainable growth.
I wonder about that, Martin, because it's interesting that while we've all been at home looking at our four walls and speaking to one another on Zoom calls of varying degrees of dodginess, there's actually been an enormous amount going on, obviously, beneath the surface. There are all of these new tourist attractions, there are revamped attractions, there are places like Titanic that have looked at the whole way that they work. What have you been up to, just to put you on the spot? Have you been able to use this last period of time to your advantage at all?
Yeah, absolutely. It has been quite difficult because although the outdoors have been open and people have been, certainly from the domestic market, have really been maximising that. We haven't been able to operate completely during that period. So it's been going from nothing to full capacity. But certainly we've been able to look at it from the impact of visitors, the increased number of visitors on the outdoors. And although we thought the outdoors were busy previously, they weren't. There were nothing in comparison to what it became last year. And certainly we've been looking at the impact that the activities that we offer, the experiences we offer, the impact that they have on the natural environment around us, because the areas that we use are very, very fragile. And quite often heavily protected. So we've been looking at that, and in particular looking at how we can try and manage those visitors when we're able to manage those visitors, and not just manage them but also educate them, because we don't want a single use. What we want is people to gain an understanding, appreciation of the outdoors and continue to avail of that, and particularly within the wider industry. If we can get the wider tourism industry to appreciate the outdoors, that then ensures that there is a form of education for all of those that are coming to enjoy them. And certainly welcoming to see the TNI, the visitor pledge, coming on board, because that means that the responsibility aspect is carried through every aspect of promotion. So we're not just encouraging people to come outdoors, regardless. What we're doing is we're saying, listen, you come outdoors, but we do have to appreciate and protect the environment that's there, because it is a finite resource.
Those are very interesting points, John, now, aren't they? Protecting the environment, yes, by all means come, but, respect the place that you're going to, and, treat it with that degree of respect. I mean, we've had stories on the news in the last week about car parks being made bigger and trees having to be cut down and so on. All of those are things that are going to have to be dealt with, aren't they? If we are all going to be using the outdoors more, make it easier for people to get there. But once they get there, they can't just kind of stick their car in the nearest field. Yeah,
and I think we've seen quite a bit of development. I mean, up in the Moorings, up on the Head Road, we've seen where perhaps one small car park facilitated everybody who wanted to walk up the Annett River Valley, up past Ben Crum. Now there are probably 5 car parks where previously there was one. And part of the reason that we've launched the pledge is because we've seen the damage that can be done by people not taking their rubbish home, burning barbecues, leaving stuff behind. We've seen some devastating sort of impact of things not being managed properly in the Moorings with the fire that we've had recently, And this is our most precious resource. So really, the pledge is about trying to encourage people, not just to utilise the environment, but as Martin said, to protect it. And I think as we move forward, that whole sense of, I suppose, consumer awareness of the environment, about the loss of biodiversity, is coming to the fore. And I think the whole industry, has to really, including ourselves and other parts of government, we have to reflect upon that, not just the consumer trend, but the moral responsibility to make sure that we protect our environment and we protect our built heritage for generations of the future. And that is an expectation that consumers now have. And if we're not doing the things to do that, they will go to other places where that is being done. So it's really important from a competitive point of view as a region that we adopt those principles as we move forward.
It opens up new areas, I'd have thought, Des, for your side of the business as well, in that people don't just want to go to the kind of standard tourist destinations, if I could put it like that. That there's a whole new appetite for different parts of Ireland, north and south. And I remember my lovely late parents, they used to like going on the Ulster bus tours, and they went to Italy on one occasion when they went on a couple of tours around the south of Ireland. They had this great bus driver who stopped at one point and said, now if you just look over there to the left, that would be the Cliffs of Moher if it wasn't raining. And then they just kind of drove on because you couldn't see your finger in front of you at that stage. But there is that whole new area that must be opening up for your members.
Yeah, I think that area already exists, but there's probably a greater emphasis on it now, and we are adapting our product offering to just ensure that we have a lot more outdoor activity. But we do find clients don't mind the rain. So we have a lot of sheepdog trials on our products, and clients are quite happy to stand out in the rain and enjoy that and make it part of their day. So, I think that outdoor is going to become more part of it, and it is more of a more authentic visit as well. But I really want to emphasize the importance of sustainability as we restart and rebuild, and to take what John and Martin are saying, it is essential, really. You have places like New Zealand now saying that they're going to turn off international travel. So that's a great risk if we don't, maintain this precious resource that we have. That could happen. So I think it's really essential that we all get behind that message, ensure that there is that focus on sustainability as we restart. And the ITOA members are very keen on ensuring that as well, and have been building up their own sustainability program over the last couple of years before COVID, and there'll be a greater focus on that now as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm sure. Of course, sustainability, part of the Tourism Recovery Action Plan. Ciaran, what does that mean for you as a hotelier, the Tourist Recovery Action Plan?
I think that the last 14 months have been very difficult. First of all, it was about survival. And we can survive on domestic tourism for a period of time. But, to actually thrive, we need a reconnection of air and sea. We need the Titanic flourishing. So we need all those things together. And from our sector, we took great encouragement. The government, of Tourism NI, Invest NI, and all these people got together, and they had a lot of smart people in the room, and they came up with that plan. I'm just hoping it's implemented now, and that's a critical thing for us. We need to implement the actions. But as a business owner in Northern Ireland, I have real confidence that we have an action plan to go forward with. Work like the Embrace the Giant spirit. We had a lot of things done, and 2019 and 2020 were going to be record years for us. And as John says, tourism drives the whole economy, and so it's so important. And the Minister has done great work around this as well.
Well, that's good. Judith, what about you? What opportunities are you looking to build on in the immediate period ahead?
Well, I think for us, as I said, we're really enjoying seeing more people from Northern Ireland come through the doors, because that wouldn't typically have been our guests. But I do think there's great opportunity both in the ROI and the GB market, not just in the short term, but actually building an awareness as Northern Ireland as a holiday destination, not just a day trip from Dublin or a short break. And I think there's a lot of people from ROI are holidaying at home this year, so it would be great that there's greater awareness of what Northern Ireland has to offer. So we're gonna work on that in the short term. But just picking up, I think what the last 15 months has really shown me is how strong this industry is, and how we are speaking with one voice, and the fact that we have the recovery plan now, I think will really put us in good stead for the next few years.
It's interesting when you say about how strong the industry is. I mean, one of the interesting aspects of the last 15 months in many different sectors of the economy has been the degree to which those who would have previously been competitors have come to regard one another as being kind of, brothers in arms, if I could put it like that. We're all in the same boat here, and there's been much more collaborative and cooperative working. Has that been something that you've found?
Absolutely. I mean, we would always have encouraged collaboration, especially because we were one of the larger operators, and I think there's an onus on us to do that. However, you've seen that go from strength to strength over the last 15 months, and the T&I have done a great job leading that and supporting that. And I think if anything comes out of this, we need to make sure that we don't lose that. Clustering and pulling experiences together. We have incredible products here in Northern Ireland that make incredible experiences, and we just need to make sure that we go from strength to strength.
And keep the best bits, John.
Yeah, I think the point that you've just made is an important one, because tourism is an ecosystem. It's interdependent. Hotels depend on visitor attractions. Visitor attractions depend on a hotel for somewhere to stay. We need to have restaurants where people can go and eat. We've got things that people can go and do and get active. So, it's an interdependency. So what we've sought to do is bring everyone together, because it's not about going to one visitor attraction versus another. What we're trying to do is, when people come here, we're to get them to go to one visitor attraction and from that one to the next one, and to move around. And ultimately what we want to do is to have more people come, have them stay longer, and spend more money and create more jobs. Essentially, that's what we see. So, I mean, the Tourism Recovery Action Plan seeks to deliver on that. And I mean, I would just like once again to say thank you, because we had well over 100 people across the industry who fed into that process to make sure that what we had was a plan that basically reflected what the needs of the industry was, and hopefully will maximise our opportunity going forward. And I think it's probably fair to say we've had a two-stranded approach, in that we've tried to target the domestic market and the Republic of Ireland market in the first instance because it's on our doorstep. But as we've been doing that, we've also been working very closely with the Irish, the Incoming Tour Operators Association, and Des and his colleagues, working with international providers, working with international agents. So we've had a whole host of events, albeit by webinar, to really make sure that our industry are connected. And in 2022 and 2023, when the opportunity for those international tourists are there to come, that Northern Ireland is front of mind and part of their thought process when they're booking.
Martin, what do you see as the opportunities for your part of the industry as we move forward?
I think there's definitely an increased interest in the outdoor environment, outdoor activities, and that's just from the domestic market. But I think that in turn will enhance the offering for the out-of-state visitor. So I think there's a big growth area there in terms of utilising what we do have. The outdoors in this country aren't extreme, so we're not talking about alpine or whatever, but the big benefit of them is that they are accessible, and they're accessible to a very, very broad range of visitors, and they do really enable you to get under the skin of the destination. So I think there's a really big growth area there. And just the one term that Des used earlier was the authenticity of it. When you go out on an experience, you get to see the authentic aspect of Northern Ireland. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It's not going to come overnight. We need to do it in conjunction with the management of the environment to ensure that it is truly sustainable. But I think there is a big, big growth opportunity there.
And Des, what are you looking now towards for the future? I mean, what do you see, for instance, as the emerging trends that are coming through from your customers?
Yeah, so one of the biggest emerging trends we're seeing now, is this focus around safety and concern that the client wants confidence that when they travel, that they will be safe. So that channel to market through intermediaries and through travel agents is more prevalent now, or becoming more prevalent now, where the customer is looking to that travel expert to recommend the destination, to give them insight. It's just so confusing at the minute as to, do you need a vaccine? Do you not need a vaccine? Do you need a test to go back? What happens if something happens when you get on location? So having the travel expert being able to guide and give that information, that's one of the biggest trends we're seeing changing to bring us back to the market. So the customer definitely is focused on safety and is looking for that guided help in getting there.
Has that been your experience, Ciaran? I mean, you were saying that actually sometimes some of your guests need reminded, actually.
Sometimes we feel like we're an information centre. The guidelines around travel in particular are complicated, but we will have guests ringing us. After the Open in Portrush, golf was a big market for us. So the golfers are still coming, but they're asking questions. And I spoke to a golfer in America last week, and he said, no, we don't do COVID anymore. That was last year. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but I think we need to have more guidance and more signposting so that we make it very, very easy for people to understand what they do and what they don't have to do. But particularly the international market, looks strong for the autumn, and people are very hopeful to be traveling to Northern Ireland from America.
Well, what sort of inquiries are you getting? You're the man at the coal face here, so it'd be interesting to hear who's on your phone or who's getting in touch.
I think when you look at when Naomi talks about all these different segments, social interviews and active this and everything else. I mean, what's really changed for us is the phone hasn't stopped ringing. So rather than the online booking system coming in, we're seeing the direct people ringing up directly. They want to know what they can do in the area. They want to know inquiries. So it's really critical at the moment around training. I mean, skills is a big focus, but our receptionists now need to know about everything that could be done in the outdoor, and not just in Derry. Northern Ireland is a very small place, and you can be really anywhere within an hour and a half So people are coming to stay with ourselves, basing with ourselves, but they're doing things in County Down, they're doing things in County Fermanagh, and they're returning that evening and telling you of the wonderful experiences they have. But I have taken calls on everything during the lockdown period. I've answered nearly every question that was ever asked in terms of what to do. So it's very important that our staff are knowledgeable. You know, the Welcome Host and Welcome All programs that we did years ago has set us in a great position. And Northern Ireland is in that position. Our staff have been very well trained. We have a great connection. I mean, I can pick up the phone to Judith and Titanic and get people booked in. I can pick up to people in Fermanagh and get things organised. And it's that continuity. We've also worked, you talk about the partnerships in this situation. We've also worked very closely where people will stay 1 or 2 days in one hotel and move on to another. Before, if you go back 5 years ago, I would never have given anybody business, in the next county. I would have tried to keep them. But the reality is you need to keep them moving. And that's what's happening in Northern Ireland, cooperation, partnership, and it's really working well at the moment.
Well, that's excellent to hear, and very interesting, actually. Judith, I saw you smiling when Ciaran was talking about how people want to ring up. Maybe we're all desperate for a conversation with somebody that we don't actually share a house with. But it is interesting that that's been one of the outcomes, isn't it?
It is. But I mean, I think for us, our staff are really can't believe how talkative people are this time. Last year was different, but when we reopened in August, customers are really wanting to spend time and hear stories and just spend time engaging with people.
Well, that's good from our point of view. I'd have thought, John, given that people in Northern Ireland are usually not behind the door and having a bit of a chat.
And I think that's reflected in the brand that we've tried to create for Northern Ireland about embracing the giant spirit, because that really is about the spirit of the people. And, all of the research that we do when people have come here, when we've asked the question, what is the thing that has stood out most? It's the friendliness and the engagement that they have with local people. And as, Des had said and Martin has said, that sort of authenticity and that sense of people want to understand the community they're within and how it ticks and how it works. As you said, there's no better place to do that than here, because, people are very keen to chat, and probably more keen to chat to tourists than they perhaps are to each other, because they're proud of the place they come from. They're proud of how tourism has performed over the last 10 years. And I think one of the sort of real benchmarks of that is people in the tourism industry will tell you you can judge how people think of the place by speaking to a taxi driver, and almost without fail, the taxi drivers, when people arrive into Belfast or at the airport or whatever, talk proudly about where they are. They, want to tell people about Titanic, Belfast, and all of the great things there is to see and do. So, they're great ambassadors, and I think they're reflective of people as a whole here and how they engage with the tourists when they come.
Excellent. With just a few minutes left, and maybe just to try and wrap this up a little bit, if we could. Des, if I could, what advice would you give to the industry now in building back that international business in the future?
I think, just to pick up at John's point there about embracing the giant spirit and that brand, we talked a lot today about ensuring that brand is implemented well on the ground and there's a good education around it. But it's a very sellable brand in the marketplace. It invokes feelings of enchantment and fantasy, and, people really want to buy into that. And I think they've done a great job in Tourism Northern Ireland in developing that brand, and we just need the funds and the investment to get that brand now out into the marketplace and ensure the co-op marketing is working well and is slick in that regard. And to get ahead of that, there's a huge amount of competition from other destinations, and that's a big challenge, because we talk about a recovery, John, in 2024, but that relies on referral business, referral from a travel agent or referral from friends and family. And the sooner you can get people on location in destination, the sooner they will go back and talk about the great time that they've had and encourage additional people to come either through their travel agent or through friends and family. And I think that's very important. I think a second point I'd like to make is that, international travel, we all have a reliance on domestic business now at the moment as we start up, and it's very important, that we grasp that and make the most of it. International travel, back in 2019 represented about 75% of revenues. Judith mentioned that it was about 65% of visitors, but in revenue terms, they're a higher spending client. They stay longer. They're more regional. So it's about 75% of the revenue, and it's going to be essential that we make room for that client when they return. And there's a lead time in the marketplace to do that of about 6 months. So it's important our partners and suppliers in Northern Ireland embrace with through Tourism Northern Ireland with the ITOA and with the operators to make that happen. I think that's we don't want to miss that transition from domestic to international, which will invariably happen.
Des, thanks very much indeed for that. Martin, I wonder, looking to the future, do you feel positive going forward at the moment? Do you see long-term opportunities that you're going to be focusing on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the challenges is at the minute, because there's so much change, it's such a dynamic situation that we're in with the level of demand from various different segments, etc., and how that's fluctuating. It's hard to think long term, but I think it's absolutely key to look long term and not to be distracted by what's happening in the short term. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of opportunity for across Northern Ireland and specific to the outdoors and the activity, the experience opportunities. So yeah, we're very positive about it. Nervous in the short term, but yeah, absolutely positive long term. We've been here long enough, and yeah, there's a way to go, but yeah, it's good.
Would you echo those sentiments, Ciaran?
Oh, I think there's great opportunity. I think the tourism recovery strategy that's in place, if we implement that and we follow the findings and around that, I'm very optimistic. We need to be flexible. That is the thing we also need to do. If anything has taught us in the last 18 months is we need to be flexible and react to what's happening at the moment. But I think this summer will be a great opportunity for businesses in our particular sector to bounce back, get some cash flow back. And get ready for the winter. The voucher campaign in the winter, I think, is very positive as well for those particular months. But as Des says, that international visitor is critical, and hopefully by next April or next May, we start to see the return to that.
Is that what you would be hoping for too, Judith?
Absolutely. I mean, we're already seeing inquiries coming in for the end of the year, which is great. There's pent-up demand in the North American market. And, I think the onus is on the industry to make sure that we do work with operators and that we're flexible. But I think there's also a piece of work to be done in terms of our communities, because we're welcoming international visitors back into our country again. We need to make sure that they are comfortable with that. Health and safety underpins everything that we do. It is safe, the carriers are safe, but I do think that what's really important is that when international visitors get here, they get that brilliant Northern Ireland welcome. And there's a piece of work to be done just with that as we come out of COVID.
That's an interesting point, John, isn't it? Just maybe to kind of wrap up on you, that little lingering nervousness that there perhaps is that still that we all need to deal with, I suppose. It's not we're not talking about other people here. We're talking about ourselves too, aren't we?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, and in the short term, so that that's engagement we need to get involved in, and I think councils have got a very important role to play in that, because they're close to the ground, and we can work with them to do that. But I mean, I think tourism globally is changing, and its focus is changing. It's not just about the visitor any longer. We talked about sustainability and protecting the environment, but I think we also need to focus on on the host communities and the benefit that tourism brings. If it's not bringing benefit to those communities, then you have to ask the question, why are people, or why are we bringing people here? So I think globally you will see that happen, and I think we're well placed to deliver that as well. I mean, if you think of places like the Mournes, and the work that Martin and people are doing in those areas, this brings sustainable employment. It brings second sources of income that perhaps which are otherwise not there. So you can retain those communities through engaging with tourism in a way that you might not otherwise do. So I think it's got a fundamentally important role to play in not just the future of our economy, but the future of how we develop as a society as we move forward, and that. Certainly, as the department and the new minister brings a strategy out, we will be sort of seeking to ensure that focus on community and that warm welcome is very much part of what we want to do as we move forward.
And your glass is half full?
I think my glass is about 3/4 full at the moment, sort of, and by 2024 it'll be absolutely full.
Well, that's great to hear. John, thank you so much. Big thanks to Martin, to Ciaran, to Des, and to Judith for joining us all here this morning. Thank you very much indeed. That's about it from me and from our panel. But just to finally wrap up the conference this morning, and thanks, by the way, to all of you too for your fantastic messages. More than 300 of you joining in. And any of those questions that we didn't get to, we will come back to you and address them with you personally. So if I could just finally ask the Chairman of Tourism NI to bring our conference to a close. Terence Brannigan.